Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka Podcast!
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot!
Welcome to Baka. This is our anime podcast. Here's what you guys need to know. 2 weeks, book club style, anime podcast. That's the normal show. That's not the show. We're doing our minisode, yay! Where we talk about random subjects that we chose because we like talking to each other. Hopefully you guys are watching ReZero, Starting Life in Another World, and we'll talk about that next week. But for today, we are talking about CGI in anime. Love it, hate it, good, bad. Before we do, we need to introduce my co-host because I'm not that smart. Okay, so we have the Darth to my Vader, Jeremy. How you doing, Jeremy?
Doing great. Good evening.
Feeling computer generated tonight?
Totally.
That's weird. You're weird. And then we have the pal to my Patine. Jason, how you doing, Jason?
I'm just glad you didn't say the jar to my jar.
The darts to my jar jar.
I'm not mad at you. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it'll happen though. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Are you feeling computer generated?
Slightly.
See, Jeremy, you're weird. You know, no one
I'm
feels all the
completely
way.
CG.
Guys, I'm a real boy. So we are talking about CGI, computer-generated images, showing up in anime, which is traditionally a hand-drawn style. We're going to be talking about anime that are fully CGI. We're going to be talking about anime that just inject it for special scenes. And whether it's good, bad, a lot of people hate this. A lot of people get very angry about these computer-generated and what they feel is their traditional anime. So we're going to share our thoughts on the topic, but you should know nothing we say actually matters. And we do want to hear your opinion. So as we talk, if you have thoughts, you can reach us at Twitter at Baka Podcast. We can also be on Tumblr, also at Baka Podcast. And our email, all one word, all lowercase, theanimebakaclub@gmail.com, or on YouTube, write down in the comments. Let us know why we're right, why we're wrong, why Jason needs better nicknames.
That's true.
Okay. Jason, you picked this out, so why don't you start us off with the anime with CGI that you've seen?
Ones that really stand out, unfortunately for me, are ones similar to Bloss Rider, or even this last one we reviewed with the Cabaneri, the Iron Fortress. It's stuff like those. Like, obviously, we've got Knights of Sidona or Ajin. Those are obviously CG. But the reason I wanted to bring it up tonight was specifically for where it's injected into an anime that just most people will scream. It just doesn't belong.
Very much. Jeremy, how about you?
You know, a lot of the time I didn't even realize I was watching an anime that had CGI in it. So Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence being CGI, didn't see that coming. Steam Boy having CGI in it, didn't see that coming. Captain Harlock was obvious, of course. But I agree with Jason that there's a distinct difference between fully CGI versus CGI injection of SFX, or rather FX, and also CGI injection of particular components of scenes. That's going to be interesting to talk about because there's ones like Gantz where some of the enemies are CGI. And it makes it's very interesting. I'll get into it later when we talk about it. But those are some of mine.
So, have either of you seen a movie called Summer Wars?
No.
Cell shaded anime. It's a movie, but a large part of the story takes place in a virtual world that was all CG. That's one of mine. I wanted to call out to one of the first, and this is a cartoon, so this is not really fair. Do you guys ever remember The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest? It was back in the 90s.
Oh, God,
it was a
yes.
sequel to the original Johnny Quest, and
Yes.
Johnny Quest would go do stupid Johnny Quest stuff, but then every once in a while they had to go into cyber Johnny Quest world, and they would be this horrible CG, especially by today's standards, but I loved it. And if they didn't go into the CG world, I was so upset. So I say that so you know where I'm coming from, that I actually usually like the CG. I think it's cool, but it has a price. It has a cost. It can be a problem. So let's go into what we think about CGI, and go ahead and give me your pros and your cons of it, as long as you have both. Jason?
So obviously the pros, they're specific for the studio. And the reason I say that is because you can do so much faster and for cheaper with CG. There's less frames you have to draw, obviously. You can do camera panning that is just near impossible with traditional hand drawing. And also mistakes when it comes to those high action scenes. I mean, CG's been being used since the 80s. We just don't notice it. Like what Jeremy was saying, he just rattled off a couple anime there that he didn't even notice it was there. And I think that's one of the pros. If it's done correctly, it can be used as an enhancement for an anime. The cons is when you get an anime such as Expelled from Paradise. Those monsters did not belong there.
I loved Expelled from Paradise.
I did too. I loved the story. I loved that movie. The monsters were weird. And the reason is because they were thrown in without trying to meld with the world that was there. And that's where the cons come from. Like, for instance, with Berserk, the new Berserk that just came out. People love the old hand-drawn version. The new one is completely CG and people hate it. I think the biggest reason they hate it is not because of the art form that's trying to be expressed. I think they hate it because they're comparing it to the old version.
Hold on, I'm looking at the monsters from Expelled from Paradise. I
You
don't remember what they look like.
So I'm talking specifically about the bugs in the very beginning of the movie. Like
yeah,
when she first lands.
There they are. You're right, those are dumb. Yeah, I mean, people have been really upset about that Berserk. I've heard that too. Seen that going around. If an anime sticks to one style, then I don't feel that it's really that much of a con. Like Knights of Sidonia, I'm not even a huge fan of their art style, but it's fine because at least it's consistent throughout. I feel like the biggest problem is when it breaks the consistency of the art style. And in My Hero Academia, I complained a lot about All Might's appearance. It wasn't because I was not just a fan of how he looked, it was because it didn't match everyone else's. I feel like that's a bigger deal than anything else.
For me, it breaks immersion if it's not done right.
What I have to contribute to this is that I think CG is a new media that's being explored. And so I think that we're in a phase where, I mean, like you say, it's been going on since the 80s. They've been injecting it, but it's really not been that long that they've actually been making more general audiences and not just cliched like Captain Harlock anime, but, whole series like Knights of Sidonia and movies that are going to be right there for the mainstream audience like Ghost in the Shell to Innocence, right? This is the time where they're starting to try to introduce this and explore this medium. And I think that it's like if you go and watch Tekken Concrete, which is it's a hand-drawn anime. It's beautiful, but the style of drawing is so jarringly different from what I'm used to from watching like anything from Dragon Ball Z to whatever other anime we've talked about, even Cabaneri and others. It's just that the style is so different that it's jarring and painful at first. But once you get past the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the movie, you start to get accustomed to it and start to see its beauty. I think the same thing is going on with CGI, where they're trying to figure out by testing new grounds what's going to work, what's not going to work. Sometimes they have stupid ideas, like the bugs. I haven't seen that, but from your guys' expressions, those must have been terrible. But
I partially disagree with you, and the reason I do is because for one, I don't think CG is used as little as you think it is. I think if you look at like just immense amounts of anime use CG, and biggest reason is cost cutting. It's when you're trying to translate your medium to an audience that, like you, is used to a particular art style. If it's not given in that direction, it can be immersion breaking, and that's where people get upset, right? Because all of a sudden they're not into the story anymore. They're worried about the weird looking monsters in the background, or because like you said with Knights of Sidonia, the whole entire medium is being expressed in a way that we can accept and move past and see the story, right?
That's where I'm specifically just talking about where it's completely CG. That's where I think they're exploring.
Yeah, because the new Gaunt's is going to be completely CG.
Oh, that's awesome! I know they make 2 live actions too.
Yeah. No, they're developing a new Gaunt's.
Oh, that's going to be fun. Okay, Troy, you actually going to watch Gaunt's now?
I have a feeling I am going to be made to watch Gaunt's.
I bet you are. If it's coming up in a new season, we're going to have to watch it. See what they did differently.
I think it's going to be like a short film. I don't think it's going to be a full-fledged season.
Fair enough.
Interesting. So on the topic, though, of injections, I think it can be separated into 3 categories. You have your category of FX, where it's things that are going to be like you've got your power-ups, your energy beams, your thrusters on ships, your lighting, all of that stuff. Then you have your second category, which is, injections to speed things up, like what you're describing. And then you have a third category, which I assign to things like Gaunt's. In Gaunt's, you had the enemies, which were these aliens. Once you got into the really powerful aliens, they were given CGI, and they had this weird action figure-y plasticiness to them. Now, by the time I got to those characters, they made you feel uneasy to look at. And that, to me, created this sense of contrast where you're describing it as immersion breaking. It would be immersion breaking if I expected those characters to be a part of this world, but it was already defined in the story that they were not. Kind of the way that Madoka Magica uses cutout paper images to present the witches' worlds. And it's jarring and it's immersion breaking, but it's only because of the contrast. Once you get used to it that, oh, this is another world, or they're from another world, you're like, okay, this uneasiness is normal, and it gives you something. I think that's the pro that I would attach to it, is if they do it right and they anchor it in the story, then they can give you a sense of uneasiness that's very hard to depict by just using different pictures, different drawings, because they're using a completely different medium. And so it feels so out of place naturally. You're just like, what is going on? That's my pro. My con is everything you said.
What about you?
I really like I said, I don't have a problem when it's a full CGI, because as long as it's a consistent art style, that's your choice. That's what you decided to go with. As long as you tell a good story, and I'm going to live with your art style. And I've watched a lot of, from Knights of Sidonia, where everyone kind of looks a little cel-shaded, to Advent Children with that hyper-realism. The Resident Evil movies that they do in CGI. And I love Advent Children, and I like those Resident Evil movies. The CGI doesn't bother me at all. Not one bit. I guess maybe I'm not a traditionalist. I don't come to the anime to see the art. I come to the anime to see the stories. In the thing that bugs me is when it's inconsistent, when it shows up out of nowhere, and when it's bad. And there's one series that has some of the best and some of the worst together. Fate Zero, which had a huge budget, right? So they spent their money, and when Archer, I forget his king name, the Archer guy that could pull the swords out of the dimensions, he gets in a fight where he decides to pull out a spaceship basically, and he flies around on his throne ship and fighting a guy in the air, and they did it mostly in CGI, and I believe the Berserker warrior lands on a jet fighter and possesses it, and they have this big air battle, all done in CGI. But they use a CGI for that throne, and it comes from like another dimension. So I'm like, oh, it doesn't look like everything else, but I can kind of give it a story reason in my head why that's so, right? It's special. Or, like I was mentioning with Summer Wars, they go into a virtual world. Now there's CGI everywhere. Well, that makes sense. It has a reason for that weird alteration. I think Gaunts would bug me if some monsters were regular and then suddenly there's creatures that are CGI and there's not that consistency. But to keep going with my point, the worst, everyone talks about it, it's infamous. The original Fate Stay Night has a scene where the main character goes into like a vision and sees a dragon, and they did not have the budget for that CGI dragon, and it's very obvious. It looks like something they would animate for the Barbie movies. Sorry, those animations aren't good. They're done very cheaply to sell to young girls, and that's what that dragon looked like. He looked like he came out of one of those, and it's jarring in context. Like, there's no reason you could have just had a bright light and done the same amount of story, but you decided you needed this big computer generated dragon, and it's almost. I don't see that as the cost-cutting version. So they decided, like, let's do something cool, and then they didn't have the money or the know-how to do something cool. So the pro is, I think you can enhance a story with it. I think you can show things that you can't normally show with animation, like Jason said. Con, though, it's high risk, high reward. You mess it up, everyone knows. Just ask The Rock as the Scorpion King. you come out as bad CGI, it is jarring. It can sour the rest of your anime
or your career.
Yeah.
That's not right. The Rock has a great career. Okay.
Oh, dude.
And also Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson is amazing.
Dwayne Johnson, if you want to come on this podcast.
We're just saying.
Guys, an anime about Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Just his life.
That would be awesome.
Playing Pokemon Go. Anyways.
I want it. Make it happen. Someone get him on the phone. Any other anime you guys want to reference in bringing this up?
Nothing really stands out to me. It's funny, you mentioned Johnny Quest and also Barbie. The big influence on me for CGI was ReBoot. I remember watching that, and that got me acclimated to CGI very well. So I think that might contribute now to why I'm okay with it. Like, if Tanya sits down and watches it, she's like, I can't even watch this. This is horrible. Even with Knights of Sidonia, she can't watch it.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, I understand why people get put off by the art style, but like I said, that's not why I'm there. I loved ReBoot. Dot Matrix is always going to be my waifu.
I loved it when Enzo wound up getting that fake eye. That was awesome.
When it became Matrix.
Yes. That was awesome.
That was a great show. Last thing I wanted to touch on was Ajin. I think I don't know if you two have seen it. It is a pure CG, but it is great. It's a great story, great story arc. The art is done well. The reason I brought this up was not to demonize CG, but to point out that if done wrong, or if they're trying to force it in due to budget, or because they think the anime needs to look a particular way, I think it's a bad choice. And
Who's done it the best in your opinion? Who's setting the bar that everyone else needs to look to?
Attack on Titan has done it phenomenally. I think that studio showed it with Cabaneri. I think they've shown it in a couple different ways, because like you can obviously tell the black smoke is CG, but it's immersive. It is different. You can immediately spot it, but it doesn't look weird. And in Attack on Titan, it is tough to tell when they're using CG. You can usually spot it every time they do a panning shot when they're attacking the Titans. Every single character is then they're a CG model. It's just too deified, if you will.
Well, I agree because I can spot it just because I've never seen this in an anime before. This is not something anime is capable of, and that's when I'm like, oh, it's got to be something on the side. But it doesn't break it at all. You're right.
Just about every single ship or robot battle where there is undodgeable amount of missiles and they're doing amazing tricks, that's all CG every time.
Hashtag Robotech.
Right. And Robotech did it well for its time. You could tell if you were looking for it, but they did it well. And the thing is that I think we've hit on it a couple of times. If you're going to pick a medium, stick to it. Don't try and force in a CG scene or CG monsters because you've got a cut budget. Do it right.
Yeah. I agree. The only ones I can think of are Steam Boy because it's known for its beauty. So what they did in CG actually contributed to an aesthetic value rather than being something that, just kind of kept at the same level. They actually made it so good that people comment on how good it looks. That's really impressive. Also, Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, just to mention it one more time, is I didn't know it was CG. In my book, that's the sign of a good CG. But that's a type of good CG, because if you're going to explore a new medium, then I would almost expect you to try and do things that would make it stand out, not just make it look like the previous medium.
But Ghost in the Shell is also the perfect place to do that, right? Like,
absolutely.
If there's a franchise to drop your CG experimenting, Ghost in the Shell can do, because even their new ones like Arise, they did that reboot. I believe are all CG.
Yeah.
But it fits Ghost in the Shell so well, because the whole point of that thing is life reality or simulated. It goes with the aesthetic and the themes fit together.
Yep.
Okay.
Just a reminder again, ReZero. We are only watching the first 13 episodes, so
don't watch more.
You listeners can watch as much as they want, even though we will. Don't get mad at us if there's like, hey, don't you know in episode 14 we learned all about this character's history? We don't know that. We're only doing the first 13 episodes. And then
deliberately ignorant.
We will finish the rest of them the 2 weeks after. Yeah. We do want to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think about CGI. What's your favorite? What's, the worst? Fates Tonight. But yeah, we want to hear your opinion on it. Like, a lot of people are opinionated about this, and share your reasons why. Be nice to each other. Be nice to me. You don't have to be nice to them, these two. But you guys are tough. You can take it. On that, I believe that's it. I shared our contact info at the beginning, so go back and rewind and listen to that. Give us another.
Listen to us again.
Give us another click. We figured out the solution.
That's right.
Okay, guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Have a great night.
Sayonara.